Hi everyone, big review here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it's time for a review of 3 King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard albums. Yes, the wonderful contemporary Australian rock outfit King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, they are back. They dropped 3 new records across the span of October. I'm now catching up with them a few weeks into November, and yeah, I've had time to digest all of them, and I thought that I would talk about them in one video. And I thought we'd talk about this one here first: Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. This counts as the 21st full-length record from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and I found it to be an interesting addition to the band's ever-growing catalog. The 7 tracks on this record are based around 7 different musical modes that kick off with the 7 notes in a major scale. But more importantly, as far as the structure and execution of these tracks go, yeah, this is one of King Gizzard's jammiest records yet, which I think is a vibe the group has been digging a little bit more into ever since they reconvened, with many of the horrors of the pandemic kind of tapering off as of late. This was a prime feature of numerous tracks on their recently released Omnium Gatherum, but they now really seem to be honing in on that in a deep and focused way with this new LP here, with a lot of the tracks on this thing hitting an average runtime of like 8 to 9 minutes. And I would say overall there's no song on this thing that really kind of overstays its welcome or lasts to the point where it's painful. Even the 13-minute Hell's Itch, which is actually loaded with catchy moments, psychedelic guitar solos, cute little flute bits, tangy organ shots, honking harmonicas, lots of angular vocal melodies too, singing refrains of Hell's Itch. The thing is a pretty satisfying jam all around, with gradually intensifying energy between everyone in the band, a variety of instrumentation, great layering, some cool melodic switch-ups too, and I love how some of the musical themes in the first half of the track return in a warmer and brighter fashion in the last leg. But not every performance on this record hits, in my opinion, even if I do respect the band trying to approach this album with as much variety as possible. For example, the feel-good intro, Mycelium, has all the makings of your standard King Gizzard jam. The guitar work, the endless grooves, the occasional calls of woo! But because the instrumentation on this track has more of a gentle, warm, and sweet demeanor, those woos are kind of matching that energy in a way. They're not the hype woo that we've heard so many times before on a lot of King Gizzard cuts. That being said, though, I am a little on the fence with this one, as the sax leads that kick the song off are a little too mild, and the whole track, truth be told, kind of ends up sounding like the happy-go-lucky theme song to some Saturday morning kid show. The track Ice 5, by comparison, comes off a lot more urgent, especially with its direct and focused lyrics on death and impending apocalyptic doom. There's more of an overt funk direction to the music, a lot more chemistry going on between the various band members. The whole thing spans past 10 minutes too, and it is engaging from front to back, with the drums going off, dueling guitar licks, fluttering flutes, lengthy solo passages. The following Magma chugs along with some kind of mystical grooves. Definitely an otherworldly vibe to it, though I do wish that the gentle vocal harmonies and some of the jammier passages had a bit more impact, a bit more fire, bite. There are moments on this track where I feel like the band is on autopilot a little bit. There are a few other tracks on the record, though, that reach very gratifying explosion points that clearly involve a bit more structure and planning. The song Iron Lung, for example, with its super aggressive sax and guitar passages in the first leg, which the band eventually ups the ante on with the searing, distorted guitar solos. Some very hype and shouty vocal passages to follow from there too. It seems like they're just consistently trying to outdo themselves energy level-wise every few minutes. Then the track Lava, you could say, builds up to an eruption of sorts after a few minutes. The rumbles of keys, sax, and drums that kick things off really build some tension, and I love the cult-like chants that arrive after we've hit this climax point around the middle. I mean, I don't just feel like I'm experiencing a piece of art in tribute to a volcano. I feel like I'm joining a cult to worship a volcano. Now, the closing cut, Glee 710, is an interesting moment, because on this one, lyrically, I feel like this is where a lot of the themes so far on the record kind of culminate, are tied together, make the record's lyrical concepts feel a bit more complete and finalized because we are revisiting them all again. And sure, while to an extent the track is making it all make sense, by that same token, I feel like the message of the song overtakes the tune itself a little bit. I don't find this track to be as appealing groove-wise or melody-wise as many other songs here. In fact, I think the lyrical proclamations that switch off with the jammier passages on the track back and forth are a wee bit awkward, and it all plays out at this really unsatisfying pace, honestly. So yeah, while it does add to the concept, weakest cut on this thing by far. Still enjoyed the record quite a bit overall and would handily give this thing a decent 7 out of 10. But as I said earlier, this is one of a few records that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard has dropped over this past October. I want to talk about the two others here as well, moving on to the album Laminated Denim. As if we didn't need more confirmation that King Gizzard is truly in their jam era right now, this record consists of 2 songs that span 30 minutes together. They are 15 minutes each, and I actually fuck with these songs pretty heavy. The jams are tight, the drums run like clockwork, the pacing is quite hypnotic. The vocal harmonies across these tracks that are very sweet, very gentle, kind of sit in a falsetto range, are super catchy. I call that hypertension in another dimension. Inside my time invention, I laminated denim. There's also more focus on guitar with both of these tracks, and I feel like that limitation kind of forces the band to be a bit more creative with the guitar work on these cuts. There's more pressure for the riffs and the solos and the harmonized leads to really pop off. You can't just like throw a saxophone into a kind of mild passage and kind of make it sound more interesting than it really is. The pacing of these tracks as well is great. Very linear structures going on here. The band chemistry actually reminds me of some classic krautrock records from back in the day from bands like Neu, but with some psych and garage elements worked in as well. And I really enjoy it. I think some fans will most likely see this record as maybe the least interesting of the 3 King Gizzard dropped over the course of October. But honestly, I just had a lot of fun getting lost in both of these tracks, and also not so lost as well, because I feel like the guitar work and some of the melodic ideas very much worth paying attention to and having in the forefront of your mind. Across this 30-minute project, I was finding myself being more edge of my seat than I was with Ice Death Planets. Also, I think there's something really ambitious about a very simple, cut and dry, 2-track, 30-minute release. Because, yeah, ultimately, I feel like the limitations the band put on themselves with this release kind of forced them to do some cool creative stuff. Now, with the setup of this album being so direct as it is, maybe there's not as much to analyze or pull apart, but I still think Laminated Denim stands as a serious highlight in this current era of King Gizzard's discography, and would easily slip this thing a light 8. Which now brings me to the third record that King Gizzard dropped in the month of October, Changes. Which, yes, does not contain the quirky time limitations of Laminated Denim, nor does it have the epic, natural, and morbid themes of Ice Death Planets. In fact, Changes is maybe the most lighthearted and fun record of the 3 to drop, even though it begins with a 13-minute opener. From what I understand, this thing was interestingly recorded over the course of 5 years at a variety of different studios and spots, and the instrumentals on these 7 tracks here really focus on those drums, bass, and especially keys. I do have to say though, this is maybe the least cohesive of the 3 records so far I've talked about in this video. It feels a bit more odds and ends, especially considering the fiery drumming and throbbing sequenced electronics on the track GONDII, which stick out like a sore thumb in the worst but also the best way. This track is easily the boldest and most fun on this record by a mile. It feels like listening to Tame Impala if the Impala was not so tame. But again, the track really kind of kicks any chance at true cohesion right in the nuts. Though I guess I can't be surprised to find that a record titled Changes has a lot of aesthetic changes across it, as well as a lot of interesting chord changes coming off the keys. But considering GONDII is easily my favorite on this record, how do the rest of the songs fare? In my opinion, pretty well. The song Hate Dancin' is another track where the band band is letting loose and getting a little tongue-in-cheek. Lots of sweet, smooth, groovy keys and bass set the stage for, yes, a track that does have a bit of a dance vibe, but there's a funny contrast going on in the anxiety-ridden lyrics that are clearly not into dancing or even getting physically close on the dance floor, which, yeah, just makes for a catchy and hilariously weird track. There's also ASTROTURF, which I found to be a pretty eccentric cut, with some campy synthesizers laced with vibrato like they're straight out of an old-school sci-fi soundtrack. The tense grooves on the chorus are great, as are some of the dark and cartoony horn hits. The track is simultaneously mysterious, colorful, and surreal, especially given some of the lyrics about morphing into a butterfly. The track No Body is a wonderful keys-driven, moody piece of psychedelic pop, really well written and executed with the finesse of like a late-era Beatles track or maybe like a big Eagles single. Then Exploding Suns is a pretty chill synth odyssey that's very explorative, lots of atmosphere surrounding some of the synths on this track. I wish the song's progression overall were a bit more eventful, but still, I do respect the trippy, woozy, and kind of otherworldly vibe it brings to the table. Plus, the smooth transition from this track into the closer does make for an interesting moment, even if I think the finishing track is slightly a cop-out. It is cheekily titled Short Change, and I like what it's doing compositionally, but mix-wise, it's kind of this very, very, very lo-fi series of synth arpeggios, which I think are just kind of rough and noisy to a fault. Now, before I head out on this record, a shout out to the 13-minute opener I alluded to earlier, which undergoes some of the most radical changes across any track on this thing, some of which are cool, some of which are not as cool, namely the weird, awkward, like jazz rap bit in the midst of the track in the first half, which, yeah, I don't know if this section went over as well, but the really distorted and ferocious psych rock climax toward the end, the very curious and strange angular jazzy melodies that kick the track off, and some of the progressions it moves into post that are all great. It's just not as fire from front to back as I hoped that it would be. But still, quite a few fun tracks on this record. Some of the most fun cuts King Gizzard has dropped in a while. Doesn't start or finish as strong as I hoped it would, but a lot of good points in the middle. A lot of good points in the middle, and could easily hand this thing a decent 2-strong 7. And yeah, those are the 3 King Gizzard records that they dropped in October that I am enjoying quite a bit, and I hope that you guys are too. Let me know what you think about these projects, all of them, down in the comments, where they stand for you in their catalog. How would you rank them just as the 3 being released in this month? Which one stood out to you the most? Which one stood out to you the least? Would love to know. Would love to know your thoughts. And yeah. That's it. Appreciate you watching. And, transition. Have you given these records a listen? Did you love them? Did you hate them? What would you rate them? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe, and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head, it's another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, King Gizzard, and the Lizard Wizard, forever.